I get to introduce an incredible panel that is going to share with you information that all of you are here looking for. Rather than read the bios, I'll refer you to your brochure that's on the tables that gives a complete bio of all of them. The only thing I'll do is I'll give you something that maybe is not on that list. I just made 4 people very nervous. First, we have Todd Monette. Todd is the site manager for Houston Refining with LyondellBasell. But more importantly than that, Todd is a leader. You'll see there's some terms in his bio about leadership, and he is that. He is the current chairman of the East Harris County Manufacturers Association, and he's doing a good job managing that process and sharing some of their very important messages about an improving economy and an improvement environment, as the chairman just said from TCEQ. Next to Todd, we have Jim Griffin. He is the Director of Operations for Dianol America. And Jim has been a leader and still is a leader. He actually chaired the East Harris County Manufacturers Association for several years through some very challenging times as they were, again, making improvements on environmental performance. In fact, Jim had the great opportunity to testify before Congress to share with them what the plants in this area were doing to improve air quality. Next to Jim, we have Steve Skarke, who is Executive Vice President and Site Manager for Kaneka North America. I think as long as I have been involved with East Harris County, ECMA, Steve has in a board position. So he has been a proven leader for our industry, very actively engaged, as his bio says. And then we have Hector Rivero at the far left. If you want to know what's going on about the first or original high-tech industry, the industry of chemistry, talk with Hector. He knows what's going on in our state, and he also represents us very well in Austin. And Hector, we should say Texas Chemical Council, but we also should say ACIT, because as I look out here, I see a lot of the ACIT members out here as well. So that's my introduction for these folks. They're going to take about 5 minutes to give you a presentation, and they have promised they're going to leave time for questions at the end. So get those questions ready. Yes, Chad, would you hold that card? There are index cards like this at your tables. If you, as you have a question, please write those down. Hold your card up, and somebody will come around and pick that up, and we will bring the cards up here, and they'll have a chance to see the questions and respond. Todd, I think we're to you.
All right. How's everyone this morning? Awesome. Okay, so what I'm going to try to do is just kind of set up the way the flow of the panel is going to go. So where do I point it?
Maybe right at the screen. Where do we direct the remote? Over here. Direct it to this side. Stand at the podium. Stand at the podium.
Oh, you got to stand?
Yes.
Why don't y'all work that and I'll give you a signal.
You have to stand on your left foot and shoot it behind your neck.
When you have an Aggie tell you to turn on the button, you know you're in trouble, Todd.
So I will begrudgingly give him a whoop, even though that pains me, Chad. Go Tigers. Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm going to talk a little bit about ECMA and the role of ECMA and ultimately kind of the renaissance I think you heard our Congressman and Chairman Longoria talk about. So we're going to give you kind of the industry perspective of this renaissance. I'm then going to turn it over to Jim and let Jim really talk about the whole investment portfolio, not only for the big part of the chemical side, but also the downstream side. So he's going to speak a little bit to that, as well as, I think, a good story on the environmental front. Jim has provided a lot of leadership in the environmental area, is the chair for our environmental committee, so he can speak extremely well to that. We're then going to talk about education and the community and our role with the community colleges and the school districts to really grow this workforce. Steve's going to take that ball and run with it. He's well positioned because he is the chairman of our Workforce Development Committee on ECMA. And then I think the other piece that has to come, I mean, our industry is positioned as I think the Chairman Longoria showed, we are ready. Well, we are ready as well, but we also have a lot of infrastructure needs. And so Hector is going to give, I think, a good snapshot in terms of where this area is with respect really to the whole state and Austin. So that's going to be the setup of the panel. I was asked by Chad to maybe start out a little bit with some information about LyondellBasell. And many of you know Lyondell as Little Lyondell. Well, I'm proud to tell you we're not little. LyondellBasell went through a rough time as the economic downturn in this company happened, went through bankruptcy, and we've come back out strong with a good plan, good leadership. You can see a little bit about the facts of the company. World's third largest petrochemical company, so we are a global company. Have a lot of leadership, not only in the olefin side of the business, but also in applying technology. We're a strong licensor of specific technologies. We just recently moved our R&D facility from Pennsylvania to right here in Houston, Texas. So strong investments. You can see the business segments. It's predominantly a chemical company. I always try to get a chuckle. I am the refinery manager, and I always like to say I'm Lyondell's favorite refinery. We're the only refinery within the company, but we're also equally invested on the technology side. Another gee whiz slide, you can see our footprint, 58 plants, 18 different countries. We've got sales all over the world, and we're a 14,000 strong team. But what I'd like to do is just close this segment because I would rather, if you'll come along with me, I want to tell you a little bit about who LyondellBasell really is, and I'm probably going to get a lot of push from this individual, but I want to just share with you, I'm surrounded by a bunch of leaders, both in ECMA as well as this industry. I learn from each one of you. In my company, I think what resembles LyondellBasell, what resembles this industry, and the work that we're doing every day, I would ask Mr. Doug Mathera to please stand up. Doug Mathera is and has been one of the plant managers in our company that kind of sets the tone for young professionals like me coming up through the system. We learn a lot from Doug. Doug has been not only a leader in this area, but also with Texas Chemical Council, with Hector. And, that is the face of LyondellBasell right there, a manufacturing professional. But he also, I think, represents what we in industry here in this part of the world try to do, and that's run our plants safe and reliable every single day. So, Doug, I just wanted to give you a shout out. Thank you. And he also gave me a seat today, so just saying. ECMA. Who is ECMA? You can see some of the stats. We're 30,000 people strong, just like Doug Mathera. A lot of the people in this room are a part of ECMA. 90 member companies, so we're a big alliance, 130 sites up and down the ship channel, LaPorte, Seabrook, Baytown, all the way through up to the line in Houston. An industry coalition that's basically focused on health, safety, environmental in our sites. We're focused on sharing best practices within our companies. We have built relationships with each community in here. We have community panels in every community. We put a lot of focus through our committees in terms of putting effective emergency management systems in place, as well as the proactive side of the agenda, trying to develop, as I said, much of the proactive agenda on the environmental front and the workforce front. That's where a lot of our focus is. We have a strong impact in this area. You can see, $12 billion impact, both direct and indirect, through taxes, payrolls, and capital projects. And we're equally prideful of the amount of money that we've spent for, the story that Dr. Shaw was talking about. Over the last 10 years, over $5 billion in keeping our footprint whole and continuing to drive improvements on the air quality side. I think this story that Chairman Longoria started out on the ship channel, the chairman was outside a minute ago, but I just want to make sure that you from the port understand that we look at the port as a lifeline. So a lot of what we do in industry is going to help drive this renaissance, but it could not happen without the ship channel. And if you think about how this story got started. Buffalo Bayou was basically a sufficient waterway, but a very costly waterway. And then the hurricane happened in 1900 that changed that whole landscape. And from there, a movement started, culminating in a Houston plan led by U.S. Representative Tom Ball that ultimately created a funding model so that the Houston Ship Channel could become a 52-mile protective waterway that basically feeds our industry today and helps create a lot of the economy that we see. And so I think it's just awesome to be here in the 100-year celebration of the Ship Channel and being able to participate in this story, but the Ship Channel is an equal part of our story. I think the other thing that the congressmen both kind of set the tone on early today, this is not just a local story. It's not just a Texas story. It's not just a story for our country. It's an international story. I had the opportunity to speak yesterday with the chairman of the Homeland Security, and he was talking about a trip that he had made over into Saudi Arabia. And it was a very timely discussion that we were having yesterday because he was giving us a little bit of insight into ISIS and everything that our country is dealing with the terror that's going on overseas. And that story was clearly on the forefront of the Royal Prince as the chairman was talking with him. But the very next topic that came out, the second threat that Saudi Arabia feels was Eagleford. So if you think about what Senator Cornyn talked about in terms of us surpassing Saudi Arabia in terms of the amount of gas being produced, the amount of the oil being produced, clearly what we have is an opportunity to be a major mover and shaker in the energy industry in terms of setting the tone for our country. And so I think that's a clear picture when you look at not only the Shell technology that 5 or 6 years ago, even though the technology was there, the application of it took an industry like ours from a moderate growth, maybe stagnant industry, to one where we're now talking about, in this area alone, $40 billion in projects. We've listed a few that you can see. I mean, there's a lot more being talked about than ultimately are working through the system, but they're all coming. Each and every day you hear a project, in the billions. Typically you don't hear a project less than $1 billion today, so all of that's coming and is, I think, setting a great tone for the story in this area. So the position of chemical companies right now, I just kind of summarize it here. We've got geography, geology, technology all coming together. The economics that's going to drive this engine for a long time. The differential cost between natural gas and crude oil is there to stay. And the infrastructure investments are all happening to basically make this be a great story. So to end my piece, here's our key initiatives. This is what East Harris County Manufacturing Association, all 30,000 of us are working on each and every day in our plants. Environmental improvement has to happen, but I like the way Dr. Shaw said it. It's growth and environmental improvement. And we're lucky that we've got leaders in this state that continue to look at it that way, and we're going to be right there at the table, Dr. Shaw, doing our part. Workforce development has to happen. We've got a lot of work going on with several community colleges in this area. We're seeing 10 to 15,000 students a month in our school district. So Steve's going to give you a lot of insight into what that's about. Clearly, we have to protect our waterfront. And so the work that's going on in terms of a storm surge protection plan, the mayors are very clear in terms of where they are. So we're doing our due diligence to make sure that we can have a position that's going to support that effort. Ultimately, it's got to get down to one plan, and then we've got to get behind it. And then, quite honestly, a lot of our work day to day in terms of running our plant safe and reliable, when things do happen, we have to be able to respond. And so whether it's the care line or our emergency response through SEMA, industry is here to do our part.
Todd, thanks. We'll go to Jim now.
Okay, very good. Well, hey, to be honest with you, I'm a little bit nervous this morning, and it has nothing to do with the audience. As I look out here, there's a lot of friends. It doesn't have anything to do with the content. I've been doing this in my career for over 30 years. It's actually that I follow Todd. See, Todd's a Tiger, and I'm a Badger. And a week ago today...
Didn't we settle that this weekend?
Yeah. Yeah, so that didn't come out so well for my end a week ago today. So we had a little side bet, so I was forced to wear a purple and yellow tie. You notice I don't have a purple and yellow tie on. When I put it on this morning, it started to choke my neck pretty aggressively. But he gave me an out, and he said that your option was to give a generous donation to Life Ministry. So I have a check for Roger. I've chosen that rather than a purple and yellow tie. I hope you're okay with that. So, what a difference 5 years has made. We did this first time 5 years ago. At that time, I was in Todd's position. And if you remember 2009, it was a tough go. We were in the middle of a recession. At that time, we were actually looking at importing natural gas. Completely different today, definitely a game changer. We hadn't built an ethane cracker in the United States 25 years. Completely different place. 5 years, and it's really exciting. We've got a lot of good things in front of us. I'll talk about a few of those today. Dr. Shaw in the group, he's such an expert environmental. I couldn't even come close to filling his shoes, but I did want to just show with you the improvement that we've made in East Harris County. If you take a little bit of a look at ozone chemistry, you can see its contributors include volatile organic compounds and oxides of nitrogen. If you look at the chart above, over 70% reduction in our area. So, it's all about continuous improvement. It gets a little bit better every year. The same thing with ozone. If you look at the top slide on the left, there's three different lines. Of course, as Dr. Shaw mentioned, there's different standards. We can certainly have a good debate, and I look forward to that. Dr. Shaw has always been excellent at pounding the table with data rather than pounding his fist, because we certainly have that data working with the EPA. And then lastly, the improvements that you see in oxides of nitrogen, very, very significant. So continuous improvement in that area. I think you might find this interesting. You look at GDP, this is the last 40 plus years, and it's compressed in that first 25 years when you look at the scale. But GDP of roughly averaging 4% a year cumulatively, not as good the recent years, but over 200%. And what that means in vehicle miles, take that down to population. We grow about 1% a year. Our country's a little bit north of 300 million people. Energy consumption a little bit below that. But take a look at the 6 common pollutants. These are things like CO and NOx and particulate matter. Over 70% reduction in that in the U.S. So absolutely, there's been significant improvement, and really the question now is where's the cost-benefit analysis going forward? Thank you. Regarding the economy and fueling the economy, we heard from both congressmen regarding the delays and delays of a couple of years on a permit and on a pipeline over 8 years. We absolutely have to get this right, but we also have to go fast. We all work for global companies. My company is Mitsubishi Chemical. We're about $40 billion. And it is extremely competitive, and it's very global, so we do need to move forward swiftly, but with all the right information. It's a complex industry. It absolutely is. We get visitors from NASA. They come to our control room. They tell us how impressive our control rooms are. It's a nice compliment from our friends at NASA, who we partner with. The right balance of technology and human competence. Steve will be talking to you about workforce. That's truly our most important asset. In our industry, every day, we improve the science in our industry. And that's why I think a lot of the new students are coming to our industry, because of that interest. Very safety critical equipment, so we run with no surprises. Houston, the largest export city in the United States, a lot of that is the products that we produce, so very, very much partnered with the port. And then, I really enjoy the ethnical diversity that we have in Houston, the biggest in the country. And that really brings great workforce to us. So this week was an interesting week for me, because my company, Mitsubishi Chemical, we have a global manufacturing conference this week. So we were on the ship channel last night, and we had visitors from all of our organizations. And when we were on the water, I asked our group from China what difference they saw, and they commented how clean our water was. So, it was very nice to hear that. I think I actually have one of my European colleagues here, and I wanted to show that because we have a large organization in Rotterdam. In fact, they were with us on the channel last night. And I think why this is so important, I wanted to have at least one slide around the macroeconomics because, again, our industry is extremely global. So if you look at the periphery, of course, 2009 recession that impacted globally. And you look at the periphery in Europe and significantly impacted and not rebounded. Of course, those are countries like Spain and Portugal and what we read about in Italy and Greece. Now, of course, there was a significant recovery, and this we're looking at industrial production, significant recovery within the greater Europe area, and of course, we know what's going on in Germany, but it has flattened out. Now look at the slope of the line in the US. Pretty significant, and a lot of that is oil, gas, petrochemicals. What does ethane mean? It's a big deal. It's a big deal in my business. These 4 pie charts, my company has assets in all 4 of those regions. We've recently announced a large monomer plant, state of Texas, very excited to get that project started, and our feedstock is ethane. And what we produce with that is we produce a monomer that goes into different plastics, goes in a lot of different applications, from commodity coatings like paints to specialty coatings in electronics. And you can see that delta in a cost curve between what we have almost equally in Saudi and the US and how different that is in Western Europe and Asia. It is truly, truly a game changer. A couple of last slides. One is just the infrastructure. In this business, we have to have the infrastructure to move forward, and that's not just the water infrastructure, that is definitely the road infrastructure. I had the opportunity last year to be on the Texas Commission for the Panama Canal, and just a reminder that 3 of the 15 most freight congested freeways in the United States are here in Harris County, so we've got to do something about that. Supply chain is critical to our business. And then lastly, what do our products go into? It is absolutely everything in this room. I would tell you that our industry is a green industry. So our products that go in the automotive industry allow that car to operate at better fuel economy. They're stronger, lighter. The medical industry is absolutely full of our products, and our products bring clean water and clean, safe water. So, I'm proud to be part of the industry. I'm proud to have this opportunity today. It's interesting to look out across this group because 2 weeks from now, this is where we host our livestock show and rodeo, and we actually judge the livestock here, so it's a little bit different view that I have right now.
It smells a little better.
Yeah, it does smell a little bit.
Yeah.
but we also raise $1 million for the community, so we appreciate that and in the work with Pasadena. So thank you for your time today.
Okay, before we jump to Steve, just one more reminder that you have index cards on your table. If you have a question that's come up, please raise your hand. Chad or others will come around and pick those cards up. Steve?
Okay. I'm going to be different and move to the podium, so if you just give me a second. Too difficult to see my slides from over there, so thanks again for having us. And I want to give credit to Chad because, he has a rule that there has to be an Aggie on every panel. So I was chosen this time to represent A&M, so thanks again. And by the way, to answer the question, no, we're not missing Johnny Football at all. Don't worry about that. So I want to start off a little bit talking about Kaneka. Those of you who don't know us, we're a fairly small company compared to a lot of these other big guys around us. Kaneka is worldwide, but we're only a $5 billion company and only 8,000 employees, so relatively small, but very, very diverse. And I want to point out that we are not Conoco, and we don't make copiers, okay? We are Kaneka, so say that with me, Kaneka. That's who we are. Thank you. Very diverse. We're very close to this convention center, only 4 miles away off Underwood Road, right by the Lyondale plant next to us. So we're probably the closest manufacturing plant to where you're sitting today and part of the Pasadena Bayport Industrial District. So thanks a lot. We really appreciate our folks over in Pasadena. This is a Google Earth image of our plant, and I like to put this up here to show you that we actually have 5 different distinct manufacturing areas, and 4 of these are polymer units, what we call specialty polymers, and the 5th one that you see up there called nutrients is very different. It's a biochemical fermentation process where we produce coenzyme Q10, maybe you've heard of that, and ubiquinol that we call QH. These are 2 very important dietary supplements that everyone needs to be taking if you're not taking it now. We're the only manufacturer in the United States, so if you're not taking Kaneka material, it's probably coming from China, so where do you want your dietary supplements coming from? So a very unique process, and we depend very heavily on this very highly technological industry that we're part of. Now, I know you can't read this slide, but I put this up here for a reason. You hear us talk a lot about upstream, downstream, this stream, that stream, and this slide kind of gives you an idea, if you're not familiar, that if you look at the bottom of the slide, this is what we call upstream processes. So everything coming out of the ground in oil and gas, through the first kind of layer of processing, and then Kaneka is really up toward the top of this page and what we call downstream. Very specialty chemicals, very specialty materials, but very dependent upon those upstream processes. So as we, in my industry, can have less expensive feeds, and even more importantly, less expensive energy coming in from this very great shale gas. So the electricity that we're purchasing now is, my energy costs are lower than any other plant within the Kaneka group. So that's very important when my company starts looking at new investments, because energy and raw materials are the major factor. Labor's important, and those costs and fixed costs are important, but variable cost, energy, raw materials, much more important when we look at these long term. So there's some very critical success factors when we look at our industry, and everything you've heard today about what's going on with our industry, there's some things that need to come together to make us successful. The first one is capital, and we don't have any shortage of that. Everyone seems to have lots of money. They're ready to invest. You've heard numbers of up to $35 billion ready to be invested in this general region, in this economy. We need technology, and we have the technology. It's been developed for fracking, for getting the material out of the ground, and then for converting it into new products, and especially products that we weren't making in the past, or different ways of making products. So that technology is there. We need the markets, and we live in a global world. So you've heard that our markets are all over the world. My small plant here in Pasadena is shipping product to India now. So we have global customers, and that's just the way the world is today. We need infrastructure, so we need the port, we need good rail, we need good roads, we need to be able to move our products very efficiently and very easily from our region here in the U.S. to all over the world. And finally, we've got to have workforce, and this is the critical key piece where we're weak right now. We've got to do some work. You've heard numbers of over 30,000 jobs coming in Texas, and that's a very low number. That's more like direct jobs. When you multiply that up to all the other jobs that we need to create, it's many times more of that number. So workforce is where we're focusing a lot of our efforts, especially in ECMA. So that's where I want to spend the rest of my time. So there's not enough people in the pipeline. Why is that? And a lot of that is because there's been a misalignment of training and education programs for current jobs and for future jobs. And there's been a paradigm in the education community going backwards that everyone needed to go to college, everyone needed to get a baccalaureate degree, and that was the path to prosperity. But we know that's not true. We know there's lots of other ways, and our industry has many of those to share those examples. This is a study that I've used several times at these talks, and it's already a year or more old. It's called collegemeasures.org, so if you want to go and take a look at that, please do. But here's the starting salaries for post-secondary degrees and the earnings and starting median first-year education. So you can see with an associate's degree about $20,000, bachelor's degree about $39,000, $40,000, but a technical associate's degree starting $50,800. This is an average for the state of Texas. And then look at that master's degree number, $63,000. I want you to remember that number, $63,000. So if we look at these associate degrees, these technical certificate degrees, you can see, yeah, the average is 50,000, but at the bottom, chemical technology starting out around 74,000. And I can tell you that after just a few years of training in our plants, these folks are well into, breaking six figures with overtime. So incredible opportunity for two-year associate's degree or technical certificates. And so 74,000, what was that master's degree number again? 63,000. So it's a big, big difference here. So ECMA has really put a lot of emphasis on workforce development. And a couple of years ago, we repurposed our training committee to become the Workforce Development Committee. And the purpose to be get out and talk to people, talk to students, talk to teachers about the jobs that are available in our industry, and to tell the truth about the petrochemical industry and what they can expect. So we prepared a couple of brochures. There's some on the table for you. It looks like this. It's called Careers in Manufacturing. And if you open it up and look to the inside, this is really where I want to direct your attention. Here's some of the careers that are available on the left-hand side, and in the middle, salaries and benefits that can be expected from our industry. And then on the right-hand side, what we're looking for. So not everyone can come into this industry because we have some pretty high criteria. For example, we do need some education. We need to have good math and science skills, but you also have to be drug-free. You also have to pass background checks, and you have to be very safety-minded. So we have to start very early with our kids in junior high and high school, make them understand that if you want to be part of this industry, you've got to pay attention to these very critical things. Otherwise, you may not have the opportunity. We've also created these job description flyers where these are available, made available through ECMA to the schools, to students, teachers, and counselors, and getting these out, again, just trying to pass the word and get information out to others. So over the past, last year, we've been around talking to over 60,000 people in this area, school districts, junior and high school students, college teachers, counselors, anyone that would be willing to give us a chance to talk. And science fairs, job fairs, Chamber of Commerce, it doesn't matter. If you want to give one of our folks a microphone, they're going to get up and tell you what's going on with workforce. So here's a few pictures of some things that were going on, small, large and small. And I want to take this opportunity to introduce a couple other folks in the room. One is Mr. Craig Beskett, who is Executive Director of ECMA. Craig, thank you very much. And is Roy Watson in the room? Roy with CP Chem. Roy is chairman of the Workforce Development Committee. So if you have an opportunity for this committee to come and talk at your school, at your chamber, wherever you'd like, please talk to Roy or Craig or myself. We'll make sure somebody gets there, and we'll set that up and make sure it happens. So thank you. I think I'm over time. Appreciate it.
Steve, thank you. Obviously, time well spent. And Chairman Longoria sitting down there, Steve says thank you for shipping that product to India, but also she likes getting that product shipped in from China as well. So we're going to go to the anchorman now. Actually, we've heard local view, we've heard some global view. Hector's going to focus on what's going on in the state of Texas for us and this region.
Thank you, Dennis. I'd also like to thank Chad for inviting me back. I figured I'd worn out my welcome last time, Chad, but thank you very much. And I want to thank the Economic Alliance for their support for the chemical industry in this state and for putting on this incredible conference here. When we talk about the success that we're having, that we're seeing not only in the industry, but the economic vibrance that we're seeing within the state of Texas, it can best be demonstrated by what you see in this room. This is an incredible example of the collaboration between industry, community, government, education. I mean, everybody is represented in this room. And so thanks to your leadership, we're able to see an incredible economic activity in this state. And then many of our members and others, vendors that are around the room, you know, it's important to have their support to make these events possible, and it's important for you to reach out and understand the different services that they're providing to you as well. It all makes the world go round for us. I'm going to talk a little bit about, these guys got to talk about all the good news, so I'm left to talk a little bit about the bad news. There is an incredible opportunity in front of us, incredible good news, but with that comes challenges, and that's one of the things that we're trying to work on in Austin, in Texas. I too Todd, I want to echo your comments about Doug Mathera, who's in the room. Doug is the dean of my board of directors. But more than that, Doug is E.F. Hutton. When Doug has something to say within our board, everyone takes notice and listens. He's been around the block, he's been here a while, and he's an incredible asset to our industry, to our board of directors, an incredible leader for us. And Doug's also been a tremendous mentor for me. So Doug, I too applaud you for everything that you do. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Chemical Council. I'm amongst a lot of friends, so a lot of you know us very well, but we have 70 member companies, over 200 manufacturing and research facilities around the state. Today, representing over $75 billion of physical asset around the state, over 75,000 direct jobs at our facilities, directly employed by companies, and over 400,000 indirect jobs, whether it be contractors, vendors, service providers, or affiliate small businesses that thrive on our industry around the state. Steve mentioned this, and so did Jim, but we are the #1 non-energy export in the state of Texas, with nearly $40 billion of product exported out of Texas every year. And Todd mentioned that we have over $40 billion of new investment that has been announced within our industry alone. So that's all great news. So how do we make all that happen, and how do we realize all of that? So I'm here to just talk a little bit briefly about a very high level about some of the issues that our industry is facing, that we as a community are going to be facing in order to realize all this investment, to realize all these jobs, and to have our economy continue to thrive. Tax policy, we have a lot of fortunately, the state is doing well monetarily, but we need to make sure that our legislative leaders and our government officials recognize the importance of having a fair and balanced tax policy, and make sure that we don't create some inequities in the system that are going to make it competitively disadvantaged, create a competitive disadvantage for us to compete against other states that are seeing the type of investment in the state and would like to steal it away. We also need to make sure that we're protecting tax incentives that are critical to allow Texas to be able to compete against not only other states, but other countries that are competing for our investment. On the civil justice reform level, we have an incredible litigation environment today, a lot of it due to a lot of the reforms that this state and our state leaders have done over the last 5 to 10 years. We need to make sure that we protect against rollback from some of those, but more importantly, we need to make sure that we're protecting against a lot of the litigation that we're seeing in the state today. Threats against our water rights and our water use by people trying to take advantage of endangered species that are not really there, that are not being used for the protection of these creatures that are endangered, but really being used to try to exploit their political initiatives. We also need to make sure that we're not creating duplicative regulatory environments as well. So we're actively working on dealing with litigation in this realm, trying to protect industry against that. On the environmental front, I think Chairman Shaw demonstrated the incredible realization that our regulators have about the potential for industry. I think that they do a very fair and balanced way of handling, making sure that people are complying with all the laws and regulation, and that we're protecting our environment, protecting our health for our communities and for our families for generations to come. We do have some challenges there. Other states are trying to compete for our investment through the regulatory process. We have challenges in Texas that are unique to us. We have greenhouse gas permitting that is just now going back to the state, where other states have a very streamlined process. We have permitting in general and in a contested case process in this state that is very protective and it can often delay and is often abused to delay the permitting processes. We're working with legislative leaders to make sure that we can streamline those processes to make sure that that is not a deterrent to breaking ground on new investment in the state. So we'll be working on a lot of those initiatives. On the water policy, I think Chairman Shaw talked a lot about the challenges we have policy-wise. When we're talking about the historic drought conditions and the population growth, we do have challenges. We need to recognize that. I think industry is embracing conservation, recycling, renewed energy, but in order to realize a lot of these economic projects that we're seeing, these capital projects, they're going to require water. Our industry uses a lot of water. We do not consume a lot of water, but it takes a lot of water in our processes. We need to make sure that that water is available for these businesses to be able to operate. There's a lot of discussion at the legislative level about desalination of water, both of brackish water, groundwater, and also of seawater. And so the state is exploring that with industry, with cities, with communities to see what can be done to look at desal as a viable option for the future. And then lastly, just oversight of our river authorities. Chairman Shaw mentioned that there was another call on the Brazos River. We're fortunate that that the commission has brought on board a new water master for the Brazos River. We've seen that on other river basins, and that may be another option that is considered for other river basins in the future to make sure that all the water rights users have a fair and equitable use of the water that they're entitled to. And then also on transportation infrastructure, we need to make sure that we have the roads in place to bring the new development from the Eagle Ford, from the Barnett Shale, so that we can get product to the customers and that those developments can be made. We need to make sure that we have a good rail infrastructure so that we can get product in and out, and that shippers are treated fairly and competitively for pricing of getting their commodities in and out. And then we need to make sure that pipelines can be put in safely and without impeding too much on personal property rights holders. And then obviously workforce. Steve Skarke did an excellent job of talking about workforce. Our work on House Bill 5 and the collaboration of so many people in this room, the collaboration with our local colleges and our high schools and our superintendents has realized incredible reform changes that can help hopefully meet the workforce needs of employers in the state. So while there's a lot of great news going on in the state about economic activity, we have some challenges that we need to work together as this community and collaborate together to make sure we can realize all this investment, not only for the current jobs in the state, but future employees and future investment for the state.
Hector, thank you. They did leave us a few minutes for questions, so I have a couple of questions that have been turned in, and one is one that actually a news reporter last year asked us, so I'll start with that one. We hear great improvement in environmental. We hear significant capital investments, so new plants. How do we build those new plants and not increase air emissions or emissions to water?
Yeah, I'd be happy to start with that. You know, as far as air, this on? Okay. As far as water, you know, what's really important to understand our industry. Sorry about that. To understand our industry relative to water is the comment around use and consume. We do use a lot of water. We don't consume water. We take that water, we clean it up, we put it back into its source. So we're just kind of rock solid in that piece. On the air side, you know, we've implemented new technologies that have continued to get better every day, and our operations factors continue to get better every day. So as we do grow our industry, you know, the largest piece of capital that we put on board with that are environmental controls.
Yeah, I would just add that's also a part of the permitting process. You know, we ultimately have to look for ways to offset if we're going to bring on new emissions.
Okay, well, while we're on the permitting process, and maybe I should signal Chairman Shaw to be prepared for this, but how does congestion in TCQ, a lot of permits going to them now because we have expansions, how does that congestion affect getting permits from TCEQ?
Yeah, we've got, for Lyondell-Basell, we've got, I want to say 3. We just announced a 4th project last week. Luckily, we're not of the same size as, an Exxon project that was announced, or the CP Chem project that you saw. So we're kind of growing within our fence line, and I think a part of the opportunity is to try to get there sooner. The environmental permits right now, we're using 2 years. So once you announce a project, you've got about a 2-year pipeline. Typically, we're hearing numbers like 500 permits in front of the next person getting in line. And so ultimately, we're doing a lot of work up front to do our due diligence to make sure the permit can get through once. And then I think we need help from Austin and from TCQ to get there efficiently. And then the third thing we do is, please.
Let me just add, I certainly don't want to speak for, I can't speak for Chairman Shaw or the commission, but I will say that our observations in working with the commission is that they do an outstanding job of trying to manage the influx of permit applications. It's a very complex procedure. For those of you that are not in industry, if you look at a permit, they're stacked in binders that can go all the way across this table. It takes a lot of work by the commission to review, make sure that those permits are administratively complete, the applications are complete. You have to get public comment, you have to respond to that comment. It's a very long and arduous process, but they do a great job of collaborating with businesses. They know that businesses are trying to break ground, that it is competitive, globally competitive, not just within the region, and they work with everyone to make sure that all the information that's required is in place, and that they can make sure and do their due diligence to make sure that that the project is right.
Steve, one follow-up question. You mentioned must be drug-free and need to pass the background check. How does that impact employees who come to us who are past felons? Is that a part of the background check that keeps them from being employed?
So it is, and I think every company is a little different in what their requirements are. For the most part, Kaneka, I know, would not accept anyone who has a federal type of issue, anything above misdemeanor. So it's pretty strict, and we look at all those very, very carefully. So there are issues. There may be other places for folks within the industry or within support groups, but working for us in the plant with your hands on the process, we have very strict requirements.
Okay. And that is one of the things that's explained to students as the workforce committee is going out talking to students.
Yes.
So it's part of the education process.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, I guess, Dennis, I would just add, that's one of the key points that we're trying to make with the kids today when we go in and touch bases, some as early as the 8th grade, is it requires a good work ethic. So yes, there are opportunities. Yes, the plant job today looks different than the ones in the past, right? One of our equal challenges is helping the parents understand that these are technical jobs and we're going to build skills, but it starts with a good work ethic, showing up for work every day and basically doing, what your grandparents taught you, what your parents are teaching you.
So we have a lot of regulatory groups we have to work with, and probably the newest one we're learning to work with is Homeland Security. And I can tell you that they're in my plant at least once a month, coming and visiting and talking and understanding what we do, and we're trying to understand their requirements. So that game has changed because of the issues around the world.
Great. Obviously, too many questions to get to in this time, but I'm going to raise one. I don't want you to answer it from here. I want you to talk about it as we go into the lunch break. This is from a former Rice football player who's saying, who will have the most wins this year? Rice, A&M, UT, LSU, or Wisconsin? So that's a topic for our lunch break. And before we go to lunch, I want to end with one other thing. If maybe each of you or one of you can just say, number one, what's driving the expansion in Texas? And what is your worst fear of what could constrain the expansion in Texas?
Yeah, it's, for us, it's definitely feedstock. It's C2, C3, C4. It's the liquids that we take out of nat gas. ethane, propane, and butane, absolutely for us. The concern is, very global business. Our corporate office is in Tokyo. We have operations around the world, and we pay the highest corporate tax rate in the United States, and it's challenging.
Yeah, I think about a year ago, our corporate president was in town, and he was very excited about shale gas, and he wanted to, feel my excitement as well. But I told him that I was a little cautiously optimistic because it looks good now, but how's it going to look 5 years from now? What's the regulatory environment going to be? What are other countries going to be doing? They're going to catch up, and there's going to, this low-cost energy is going to be available, not just here in Texas, but all over the world. So how are we going to compete 5 years from now? That's my biggest concern.
And I would just add, I think we all have a lot of the same economic drivers, so there's not a bunch that differentiates this. It may get monetized a little differently, but I think the two big issues, hopefully, that you're taking away today that could derail it is the environmental piece, not being able to get the environmental permits that we need in a timely fashion, because that investment's going to get made somewhere. And then secondly, workforce.
Let me just echo one thing, and that is that there's a lot of excitement, industry, there's a lot of opportunity. I talked to vendors, business is good. There's an incredible support around all the economic activity, but I think the big challenge is we cannot take it for granted. 5 to 10 years ago, there was not a plant manager that would tell me that a new cracker would be built in Texas. 5 to 10 years ago, there's not a plant manager that would tell me that they would see a whole lot of new capital investment being put in place in Texas. So we have a unique opportunity. Let's not take it for granted. Let's keep working together. Let's keep collaborating to make all those pieces of the puzzle fit together for everyone's success.
Thank you, panel.